What if the countries we barely notice or haven't visited are the ones that have figured it all out already? What if the real innovators aren't the superpowers dominating headlines that we read each day, but are the small nations, the Davids, I call them, quietly outperforming them? While Goliaths clash and chaos reigns, these small companies are busy and quietly rewriting the world and the rules and showing us how to thrive. Today, I'd like to take you on a small journey to discover how their example offers hope in a world desperate for progress and for purpose. So if you look around, this is sort of the information that we consume on a daily basis. There's no shortage of bad news and gloom and doom. We hear about broken democracies, global powers bullying smaller nations, bullying themselves. We've seen a disturbing pattern of might makes right, with brutal warfare, staggering levels of debt, vast inequalities. I could go on. If a country were a patient, what would be the vital signs and what would they be telling us? We'd be looking at things like GDP per capita, education scores, innovation, levels of inequality through Gini coefficients, and trust in government. These small nations score at the top of the charts wherever we look. In this particular case, we see global competitiveness of the small successful countries versus the G20. The absolute terms are staggering, but what's even more impressive is that the trend is positive for these smaller countries, while the large nations are declining in terms of competitiveness. But there's more. If you look at the United Nations Human Development Index, 9 out of the top 10 countries have populations of less than 25 million people. The most competitive countries, 9 of the 10, are also small countries. The 5 best countries to live in as a woman are all small nations. And if you want to be happy, the 10 happiest countries, all of them are small countries. Here you see a list of the most competitive countries in the world. And here are the happiest countries as well. But these are statistics, and the rankings, of course, speak for themselves. But the real question is why? Why do these Davids consistently outperform? And that's the rest of my talk. I'd like to get into the why factor. Albert Einstein once said, "Not everything that counts can be measured." So what are the invisible forces that are working here? What's driving their success? Today, I'd like to share with you 4 lessons from these nations. Some of them you may find to be quite counterintuitive. In my book, Too Small to Fail, I talked about and explored the paradox that vulnerability can actually become a strength. Consider the Netherlands. 70% of the land in the Netherlands is underwater. Catastrophic floods occur each generation. So through that, through this weakness, they've developed a strength of being able to conduct collective problem solvings together. This is a weakness that is incredibly important today in a world that's facing global warming, cybersecurity, mass immigration, and other features, other problems of an existential nature that are agnostic to borders. Singapore, a tiny land-constrained country, lives in the shadow of a giant Chinese dragon. But nevertheless, it's become arguably the most successful country in modern times, even though it's only 60 years old. Switzerland, the country I come from, threads carefully between the toes of elephants and has navigated around powerful neighbors, very dangerous neighbors, like Napoleon, Hitler, and Putin. Vulnerability is also a wonderful antidote against the type of complacency which is plaguing the world. It forces nations to be alert. It unites them. Modesty is also a benefit of vulnerability and related. These nations place considerable value on humility, treating people with similar respect, whether it's the cleaning lady or the CEO of a multinational company. We prefer to work with modest people. We don't particularly like arrogant people. And who among us doesn't want to be treated with respect? The second thing, beyond vulnerability, is something quite radical as it is simple. Every child shares the same 12-year journey. Each has equal opportunity for an excellent education that is free. If these countries, the Princess of Denmark sits next to the plumber's daughter in a public school, sons of doctors and lawyers study next to sons of carpenters and construction workers. The youth not only learn math and reading and focus on SAT scores and A levels and PISA scores, but they also are trained to be good citizens. Because at the end of the day, they realize that informed, engaged citizens is what makes democracies great, not the politicians that we elect. But really what makes the whole thing work are the teachers. They're sort of the linchpin of the entire system. They're well paid, and they enjoy high social esteem. In the case of Finland, it's the second most desirable partner to have in marriage after a medical doctor. And it really sort of encompasses the notion of God's chosen profession. No matter how you cut it, the quality of an education system cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. Through this common journey that they all follow together, the young people learn shared social norms. They're building on unity far stronger than any law or regulation can create. Contrast this with places where access to education is fiercely competitive or the domain of the privileged few, where most citizens struggle to pass a standard civics test designed for immigrants, where frantic parents compete for slots in the most prestigious kindergartens as they chase their way through their childhood trying to get into the best universities. With so many pathways of education ranging from remedial to privilege, why should we be surprised if after 30 years we wake up and we realize that societies are subject to such extreme levels of inequality? The third feature I'd like to bring up is the willingness of experimentation. These David countries are global traders. Over half of their GDP are subject to export. They have the type of mindset that actually made Portugal great. They're exposed to the world's challenges and opportunities. Most of all, they face exogenous forces, so they must be nimble, and then they're forced to adapt. They don't have natural resources, so they have to rely on human resources. They're also better because of superior social cohesion to intermediate a consensus in society, something that other countries are really struggling to do. Because they're small and exposed, they become kind of living laboratories around the world. Singapore spends a quarter of what America and the NHS spends on healthcare, but has superior outcomes and better inclusivity. Denmark learned to replace cars with bicycles and reclaim city life. For pedestrians and for people riding bicycle. Jan Gehl, who's the famous architect who made all this work and which has subsequently been duplicated in cities around the world, discovered that life happens at 3 kilometers an hour. Canada and Singapore use point-based immigration, so they select immigrants based on their ability to contribute to the nation's prosperity. In Australia, every regulation that's 10 years old dies a natural death unless it's explicitly renewed by Parliament. These aren't just policies, they're mutations. And if they work, it means that these nations have succeeded in arriving at the future first. And that's an exciting place to be. So I'll go to the final factor, which has a couple of visuals to explain, but I think it's probably the most important feature of all of these successful attributes. Across the world, politics over the past century has been a bitter contest between markets and government, between capital and labor. The right argues that government is incapable of doing anything, just about anything. The left feels that if free markets are given full rein, it's a matter of time before something ends in tears, as we saw in the great financial crisis. So here I have like two examples of, one, the red, where you have a very pro sort of Republican or right type of concentration, and here the blue is where you have a political system which is very much geared towards the left and pro-government. But the problem is this leads to a zero-sum game, one characterized by polarization, by gridlock, and by brick throwing. It's not a nice place to be. This is something that we're experiencing, whether it's Brexit or Trump, etc. What you see in these successful countries is they've got it. They've understood it. It's not about either or. It's about both. You can have Google and still have good public schools. You can have brilliant innovations, but still well-functioning infrastructure. You can even have private jets that coexist with free public transportation. These small nations prove life is vastly superior when you can combine the superior government with more free markets. And this is what you see on the right. You have this would be a country like Denmark, Singapore, Switzerland, etc., where they've optimized for more free markets and better government. And this area, this orange area, is the net win, the net increase of prosperity, which is available by shifting from a zero-sum mindset to a more expansive mindset. Just to take an example, say in the United States, because I'm a dual citizen of the United States and Switzerland, so I try to speak to both of those. The U.S. is a paradox. In the first instance, it's an economic juggernaut. Very few people would deny that. But it has third world government services. There's no country that excels in individual achievement better than America. Nobel Prizes, Olympic gold medals, Academy Awards. The next Google or NVIDIA is likely to arise from Silicon Valley. But what about our common needs? What about childcare, primary schools, healthcare, public transportation, pensions, safety? These are things we all need and on a daily basis. America scores in the bottom quartile of developed nations, in some instances even in the bottom decile. As the wealthiest and most powerful country in the world, Americans deserve better, and there's tremendous scope for opportunity for improving things. But first, they have to know before they begin to care. So just to bring this to a conclusion, progress has always been about, and forever will be, about finding something that works and then reverse engineering. Think of the wheel, the iPhone. Think of your own personal lives where you made the most progress at a certain episode. These small nations aren't perfect. No country is. But they've proven that vulnerability can forge strength. Shared pathways create cohesion. Experimentation beats ideology. And individual wealth can coexist with commonwealth. The question isn't whether their lessons apply to everyone. The question is, could they lead us to a better future, and whether we have the courage to follow it. The future is being written right now, not in Washington, Beijing, or Moscow, but in places like Copenhagen, Singapore, Helsinki, and hopefully Lisbon. Are we paying attention? Thank you.